Ever find yourself jumping from laughter to tears quicker than a Netflix binge? You're not alone. Life's emotional swings are like a never-ending soap opera, complete with dramatic plot twists. One minute you're riding high on a wave of joy, the next you're drowning in a sea of despair. But what if I told you there's a way to navigate these choppy emotional waters and find your sea legs? What if happiness isn't some elusive destination, but a skill you can cultivate? Stick around, because in this video we're diving deep into the world of emotions and emerging with 5 powerful tools to boost your happiness. Let's be honest, we've all been there. That moment when you feel the sting of rejection, the burn of anger, or the weight of sadness, and you think, nope, not dealing with this right now. So what do? We shove it down, deep down, into that secret compartment we reserve for messy, inconvenient feelings. We pretend they don't exist, hoping they'll magically disappear. Emotional volcano boy. But here's the catch. Our bodies are like emotional garbage cans. Every suppressed tear, every choked back sob, every swallowed rage, it all gets dumped in there. And just like a real garbage can, if you keep piling it on without ever taking out the trash, things are bound to get messy. Think about it. Have you ever snapped at a loved one over something trivial after a particularly stressful day? Or found yourself inexplicably weepy during a cheesy commercial? That's your emotional garbage overflowing. Our bodies weren't designed to be landfills for unprocessed emotions. Bottling them up doesn't make them vanish. It just gives them a dark, damp breeding ground to fester and multiply. And trust me, the longer you ignore the stench, the worse the explosion will be. This isn't just some new age mumbo-jumbo, it's science. Suppressed emotions have been linked to a whole host of physical and mental health issues, from anxiety and depression to heart disease and autoimmune disorders. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually it's going to pop up, often in the most unexpected and unwelcome ways. So what's the solution? Emotional volcano boy. It's time to stop treating our bodies like emotional dumping grounds and start embracing a radical act of self-care, emotional detoxification. Just like we nourish our bodies with healthy food and exercise, we need to find healthy ways to process and release our emotions. It's about creating space for vulnerability, for authenticity, for the full spectrum of human experience. This isn't about wallowing in negativity or becoming slaves to our emotions. It's about acknowledging their presence, understanding their message, and allowing them to move through us without wreaking havoc. It's about learning to befriend our feelings, even the messy, uncomfortable ones, because they hold valuable insights into our deepest selves. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I need to stop bottling my emotions. But what do I do with them instead? How do I actually process these feelings without losing my mind? Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I've spent years studying human connection, vulnerability, and resilience. And I've learned a thing or two about navigating the choppy waters of our inner world. And it turns out, there's a whole playbook out there filled with strategies to help us manage our emotions in a healthy, constructive way. Psychologist Lynn Y. One of my favorite resources is the work of Dr. Lynn Y, a psychologist who specializes in emotional regulation. Dr. Y emphasizes that emotional health isn't about eliminating negative emotions altogether. That's about as realistic as wishing away a rainy day. Instead, it's about learning to ride the waves of our emotions without getting swept away by the current. She compares it to dieting, not the restrictive calorie counting kind, but the kind where you focus on nourishing your body with healthy foods that fuel your well-being. Just like we choose foods that give us energy and vitality, we can choose emotional habits that promote inner peace and resilience. So, what does an emotional diet look like in practice? It starts with becoming aware of our emotional landscape. What are the common triggers that send us spiraling? What are the physical sensations we experience when we're feeling overwhelmed? Once we start paying attention to our internal world, we can begin to identify the patterns and habits that are no longer serving us.
Remember that overflowing garbage can analogy? Well, one of the best ways to prevent emotional buildup is to find healthy outlets for expression. Think of it like installing a garbage disposal in your emotional kitchen. Instead of letting things fester and rot, you're grinding them up and sending them down the drain.
Now, when it comes to emotional expression, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might feel totally unnatural for another. The key is to experiment and find what resonates with you.
For some, it might be talking it out with a trusted friend, therapist, or support group. There's something incredibly cathartic about putting words to our feelings, about hearing ourselves say them out loud, and knowing that we're being heard without judgment.
Others might find solace in writing, pouring their hearts out onto the page without the fear of censorship or criticism. Journaling can be a powerful tool for self-discovery, allowing us to process our thoughts and feelings in a safe and private space.
And then there are those who express themselves through movement, art, or music, dancing, painting, singing, playing an instrument. These activities can be incredibly therapeutic, allowing us to channel our emotions into something beautiful and tangible.
The important thing is to find an outlet that allows you to express your emotions authentically and safely. It's not about being good at it, it's about letting go of judgment and allowing yourself to feel. Now, while expressing our emotions is crucial, sometimes it's not enough to simply release them and move on. Sometimes we need to dig a little deeper to explore the root causes of our emotional patterns. It's like having a persistent leak in your basement. You can keep mopping up the water, but until you find and fix the source of the leak, the problem will keep coming back.
This is where things can get a little tricky, because often the roots of our emotional patterns lie buried in our past experiences, particularly those from our childhood. As the saying goes, the child is father to the man.
Our early relationships, particularly with our primary caregivers, shape our beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If we grew up in an environment where vulnerability was discouraged, where emotions were dismissed or punished, we may have learned to suppress our feelings as a way of protecting ourselves.
We may have developed coping mechanisms that served us well as children, but are no longer serving us as adults. This is where the work of Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, comes in. Jung believed that we all have an inner child, a part of ourselves that carries the wounds and experiences of our past.
And often, it's this inner child who's driving the bus when it comes to our emotional reactions. When we feel triggered, when we react in ways that feel out of proportion to the situation, it's often our inner child who's feeling scared, hurt, or abandoned. And until we acknowledge and address those underlying wounds, we're likely to keep repeating the same patterns in our lives. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of emotional expression, about digging deeper to understand the roots of our emotional patterns, and about the role our inner child plays in shaping our reactions.
But what happens when we uncover those old wounds, those unmet needs from childhood? What do we do with the realization that maybe, just maybe, we didn't get everything we needed growing up?
Here's the good news. We have the power to rewrite the script. We can't change the past, but we can change the way we relate to it. We can choose to become the loving, supportive parents to ourselves that we may not have had growing up.
This isn't about blaming our parents or dwelling in resentment. It's about taking responsibility for our own healing, about recognizing that we have the power to give ourselves the love and compassion we deserve.
So what does it look like to be our own parents? It starts with self-compassion. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a dear friend. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, perfectly imperfect in our own unique ways.
It's also about setting healthy boundaries. Just like a loving parent sets limits for their child's well-being, we need to set boundaries with ourselves and others to protect our emotional energy. This might mean saying no to commitments that drain us, setting aside time for self-care, or distancing ourselves from relationships that are no longer serving us.
And finally, being our own parents means giving ourselves permission to feel our feelings fully and completely, without judgment or shame. It means creating a safe and nurturing space within ourselves where all of our emotions are welcome, where we can be vulnerable and authentic without fear of rejection. Remember, the secret source to happiness is believing you can create it. Emotional healing is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. So keep at it, and remember, you're never truly alone in this journey. We're all in this together, navigating the messy, beautiful, heartbreaking, and ultimately transformative journey of being human. And the more we can show up for ourselves and each other with compassion and authenticity, the brighter our collective future becomes.